All right, fourth grade. I am going to be reading pages 191 to 200 today of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Hopefully you guys enjoy what you hear tonight. They dropped lower and clenched beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone even noticing. Come on, Hermione, Ron muttered desperately. Hermione had fought her way across the stand where Snape stood and was now racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell headfirst into the row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Bright blue flame shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into a little jar in the pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what had happened. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber down on his broom. Neville, you can look, Ron said. Neville had been sobbing into Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding toward the ground when the crowd saw him clap his hand in his mouth as though he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving it above his head, and the game ended in complete confusion. He didn't catch it, he nearly swallowed it. Fling was still howling 20 minutes later, but it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any rules, and Lee Jordan was still happily shouting the results. Gryffindor had won by 176 points to 60. Harry heard none of this, though. He was being made a cup of strong tea back in Hagrid's hut with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering. He wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry and Ron and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided on the truth. I found out something about him, he told Hagrid. He tried to get past the three-legged dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? He said. Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. Bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year, and I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the. Yes, said Harry eagerly. Nope, don't ask me any more, said Hagrid. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He don't do nothing of the sort. So why did he try to kill Harry? Said Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep your eye contact, and Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, said Hagrid. I don't know why Harry's broom acted like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, all three of you. You're meddling in things you don't concern you. It's dangerous. You forget that dog and you forget that garden. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha, said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. Chapter 12, the Mirror of Erised. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holidays to start, while the Gryffindor common room in the great hall had roaring fires. The drafty corridors had become icy, and a bitter wind rattled the windows in the classrooms. Worst of all were Professor Snape's classes down in the dungeons, where the breath rose in the mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. I do feel so sorry, said Draco Malfoy, one potion's class, for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted at home. He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted by the Slytherins that had lost, he had tried to get everyone laughing at how wide-mouthed Tree Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he realized that nobody found this funny because they were all so impressed by the way Harry had managed to stay on his buckling broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't going back to Privet Drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before making a list of students who would be staying at the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all, though. This would probably be the best Christmas he'd ever had. Ron and his brothers were staying too because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of the potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet were sticking out of the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. "No, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind him. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be a gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts? I suppose that hut of Hagrid's must seem like a palace compared to what your family's used to." Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. "Weasley!" Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. "He was provoked, Professor Snape," said Hagrid. "Malfoy was insulting his family." "But be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid," said Snape sulkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you." Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. "I'll get him," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. "One of these days I'll get him." "I hate them both," said Harry, "Malfoy and Snape." "Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell you what, come and see me in the Great Hall. Looks a treat." So the three of them followed Hagrid and his tree off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. "Ah, Hagrid, the last tree. Put it in the far corner, would ya?" The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. "How many days you got until your holidays?" Hagrid asked. "Just one," said Hermione. "And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library." "Oh, yeah, you're right," said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and was trailing away with branches of the new tree. "The library," said Hagrid. "Just before the holidays? Bit keen, aren't ya?" We're not working," Harry told him brightly. "Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is." "You what?" Hagrid said, shocked. "Listen here. I've told you. Drop it. It's nothing to you what that dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all," said Hermione. "Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble," Harry added. "We must have been through hundreds of books already. I can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere." "I'm saying nothing," said Hagrid flatly. "Just have to find out for ourselves then," said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had they had indeed been searching books for Flamel's name ever since Hagrid had let it slip, because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself into a book. He wasn't in great wizards of the 20th century or notable magical names of our time. He was missing, too, from the independent modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library, tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of rows. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search, while Ron strode off down a new row of books and started pulling them off the shelves at random. Harry wandered to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you needed a specifically signed note from one of the teachers to look in any way at the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts, and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. "What are you looking for, boy?" "Nothing," said Harry. Madame Pince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. "You'd better get out, then. Go on, out." Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they'd better not ask Madame Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for 2 weeks after all, but as they only had odd moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they hadn't found anything. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madame Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads, and they went out to lunch. You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you? Said Hermione, and send me an owl if you find something. And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is, said Ron. It'd be safe to ask them. Very safe, as they're both dentists, said Hermione. Once the holidays had started, Ron and Harry were having too good a time to think much about Flamel. They had the dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the hour, eating anything they could spear on a toasting fork, bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk about even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This was exactly like Muggle chess, except for the figures were alive, which made it a lot more directing troops in battle. Ron's set was very old and battered. Like everything else he owned, it had once belonged to someone else in the family. In this case, his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them all so well, he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. Harry played with chessmen Seamus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there. Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can afford to lose him. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any presents at all. When he awoke early in the morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the front of his bed. Merry Christmas, said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled on his bathrobe. You too, said Harry. Will you look at this? I've got some presents. What did you expect, Turnip? Said Ron, turning to his pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was, To Harry from Hagrid. Inside, a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it for him from wood. Harry blew it, and it sounded a bit like an owl. A second very smart parcel contained a note. We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Taped to the note was a 50-pence piece. That's friendly, said Harry. Ron was fascinated by the 50 pence. Weird, he said. What a shape. This is money? You can keep it, said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. Hagrid and my aunt and uncles. So, who sent these? I think I know who that one's from, said Ron, turning a bit pink and pointing at a very lumpy parcel. My mom. I told her you didn't expect any presents, and oh no, he groaned, she's made you a Weasley sweater. Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick hand-knitted sweater, an emerald green, and a large box of homemade fudge. And that is all for today, fourth grade. Thanks for joining.